In 1346, the most feared army on Earth surrounded a city called Kaffa. They came to conquer it. Instead, they helped unleash one of the deadliest disasters in human history. To understand why, you have to understand who they were. The Golden Horde, descendants of Genghis Khan, an empire born from conquest, built on speed, terror, and absolute destruction. For more than a century, Mongol armies had swept across Asia and Eastern Europe like a force of nature. Cities burned, kingdoms collapsed, entire dynasties disappeared. They destroyed Baghdad, shattered old empires, forced kings to kneel, made Europe panic at the sound of their approach. No army seemed able to stop them, and in the 1340s, they turned toward Kaffa. Kaffa was a wealthy Genoese trading port on the Crimean coast, a gateway between east and west. Silk, spices, gold, people, everything moved through ports like this. Control Kaffa, and you controlled one of the great arteries of medieval trade. So the Golden Horde surrounded it. The siege dragged on. The city walls held. The defenders refused to surrender. And outside the walls, the Mongols waited, patient, relentless, certain they would eventually win. Then something started killing them. Not arrows, not swords, not starvation. Something else. Something invisible. It had likely traveled westward through trade routes from Central Asia, moving silently through caravans and ships, through cargo, through fleas, through rats, through people who never knew they were carrying it. Nobody understood what it was. The medieval world had no concept of bacteria, no germ theory, no antibiotics, no understanding of contagion beyond fear and superstition. All they knew was what happened next. First came the fever, then weakness, then the swellings, large blackened buboes appearing in the neck, groin, and armpits. Then came the bleeding beneath the skin, then death, sometimes within days. Men who had survived brutal campaigns across continents were suddenly dying in their tents from something they couldn't fight. The siege began collapsing. The army outside Kaffa, one of the most feared military forces on Earth, was being devastated by disease. And for perhaps the first time in generations, the Mongols were facing an enemy they could not terrorize into submission. So they withdrew. But the story didn't end there. Inside Kaffa, the Genoese merchants believed they had survived. They had endured the siege, outlasted the Mongols, watched the invaders retreat. So they boarded ships and sailed home. What they didn't know was that the disease had already entered the city, and now it was traveling with them. Ship after ship crossed the Black Sea, then the Bosporus, then into the Mediterranean. And at nearly every port, the same pattern emerged. People arrived healthy. Days later, they were dying. Constantinople was hit, then Sicily. One account described ships arriving with sailors already dead at their oars. Authorities tried to force some vessels back out to sea. Too late. The infection was already ashore. Messina, Genoa, Venice, Marseille. The plague moved faster than news itself. Entire towns were infected before neighboring villages even understood there was danger. Nobody knew how to stop it. People blamed poisoned air, foreigners, astrology, sin, God's punishment. Fear spread almost as quickly as the disease. Families abandoned relatives, doctors fled cities, priests died hearing confessions. Mass graves filled faster than they could be dug. And still, the plague kept moving. By 1348, it was tearing through France and England. By 1350, it had spread across much of Europe. Tens of millions were dead. In parts of Europe, nearly half the population disappeared. Cities that had taken centuries to build were left half empty. Fields rotted untouched because there was nobody left to harvest them. Trade collapsed. Communities vanished. Entire bloodlines disappeared from history. And the psychological damage was just as catastrophic. The church, the most powerful institution in medieval Europe, could not explain what was happening, could not stop it, could not protect people from it. Its authority survived, but its certainty did not. The old medieval world began to crack. Labor suddenly became valuable. Workers who survived could demand higher wages. Peasants gained leverage over nobles for the first time in generations. Feudal systems weakened. Power shifted. The Black Death did not single-handedly end the Middle Ages, but it accelerated the collapse of the old order and changed Europe permanently. And the most terrifying part? None of this began with a grand plan. No emperor ordered it. No king unleashed it deliberately. No army invaded Europe carrying banners of plague. History changed because frightened men escaped a collapsing siege without understanding what was already traveling with them. A retreat, a trade route, a few ships leaving port. That was enough. The Mongols never conquered Western Europe, but something traveling behind them helped reshape it anyway. So here's the question. How many moments in history looked insignificant at the time, right before they changed the world forever?